Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Many in southern Alberta woke up to a winter wonderland today. We will explain how long the snow will be sticking around. A new report from Health Canada says Canadians who were fully immunized from COVID-19 still ended up getting the virus. And a church in Lethbridge is making a big donation to the Lethbridge School Division to support kids who are learning from home.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you live in southwestern Alberta, you more than likely checked the calendar to see what day it was today. Many of us woke up to a winter wonderland. It's hard to believe it's the third week of May. Look at all of that snow. Environment Canada issued a snowfall warning for earlier today. Many areas around Lethbridge received around 5 centimeters of the white stuff, but closer to the mountains, they got up to 15 centimeters. Unbelievable. Jeanette Rocher is here now with a quick look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, it's a good thing I didn't take down my Christmas lights. How long is the snow expected to last?
Yeah, well, if you haven't taken your Christmas lights down, then I would say flip them on, let them shine, be festive, might as well make the best out of a really strange situation for May. So yes, this wet, heavy snowfall sticking around for much of Thursday evening, not tapering off until Friday. Some areas of southern Alberta expecting 10 to 20 centimeters of the white stuff, while the Cypress Hills area expecting up to 30 centimeters. So to answer your question, Hal, this white stuff sticking around at least until Friday.
Thanks so much, Jeanette. Jeanette will have more details with a complete look at the weather forecast coming up later in our program. You know, the snow makes it easier to think about hockey right now. The NHL playoffs are well underway. And for this week's poll question, we are asking, which Canadian team will go the farthest in the NHL playoffs? Make sure you log on to our website, bridgecitynews.ca, and let us know your thoughts. We'll add up the votes for you and have them on tomorrow's newscast. Health Canada says of May 13th, 740 fully vaccinated people have contracted COVID-19. It also says almost 13,500 people who received their first dose were infected. The department says the stats came from 9 provinces that submitted data. It takes about 14 days after the first dose and 7 days after the second for the immunity it confers to take effect. Health Canada says 443 people were hospitalized with COVID-19 2 weeks or more after receiving their first dose. Of that group, 95 Canadians died. Health Canada says 32 were hospitalized at least a week after receiving their second dose, with 13 people dying. It appears as though some Albertans may be attempting to prevent others from receiving their COVID-19 vaccination shots. In a tweet earlier today, Alberta Health Services says they were aware of people on social media who were claiming to have booked multiple COVID-19 vaccination appointments in an attempt to prevent others from receiving their dose. AHS says they've shared with law enforcement and are ensuring that participating pharmacies are aware of these claims. Officials say they have systems in place to prevent double bookings and are also watching for no-show numbers to determine if false bookings are being made. AHS says they have not seen an increase in no-shows. The province announced just over 2.3 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine have been administered in Alberta. That includes over 335,000 Albertans who've been fully vaccinated with 2 doses. All Albertans 12 and older are now eligible to book appointments through the AHS or at a participating pharmacy. Legislation also now allows Albertans up to 3 hours of paid job-protected leave to get the COVID-19 vaccine. Also, beginning May 25th, kindergarten through grade 12 students will return to in-person learning, except for the students at the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, where case counts are still high. Some governments across Canada are apparently withholding COVID-19 information. Experts say it's an exercise of paternalistic information hoarding, which is likely meant to regulate public reaction to the pandemic. That's according to a recent story by the Toronto Star. Access to information expert Sean Holman from Mount Royal University in Calgary said recent uproar in British Columbia over revelations of the province only releasing a fraction of its COVID-19 data to the public is just one example. Holman says it does not surprise him. He says it really emphasizes the need for governments to provide more information about what's going on during the pandemic. Last year, advocates complained of governments withholding information about how many ventilators the country had and where new shipment of masks was being manufactured. The provincial government recently announced they will be offering rapid antigen COVID-19 testing kits to all chambers of commerce in Alberta to help nonprofits and business owners screen for the virus. The Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce will be responsible for distributing these tests to local businesses. The Chamber hosted an information session for its members to discuss what the rollout may look like.
So for example, if you have a location in Coaldale, we're going to help you out. Even Fort McLeod, we're going to help you out. So if it's something within our region, we will ensure that we help you. From the information that we've received is that they're solid tests, but that is why it is important to use the tracking system, because if there was a lot that is off, that is why those tracking systems are in place. Unfortunately, nothing's ever, especially in testing, nothing is ever 100% perfect. But the results that they've received so far is that they're excellent, and that's why they're standing by this specific test that they're sending us.
If and when COVID-19 is reported within a business, results will be deferred back to Alberta Health Services. Pediatricians across southern Alberta are working together to bring the very first vaccine confidence clinic to the province. Family physicians are encouraged to refer parents and their children. With kids 12 and up being eligible for the shot, many parents have questions. A Southern Alberta pediatric infectious disease specialist says the most common concern for parents is safety.
People are concerned about long-term effects. People are concerned about was this shown to work in children? Was it shown to protect kids? Is it safe for them to have it? And then the other really big question is, why do kids need to have this vaccine? What can this vaccine, what does protection with this vaccine mean for different kids? Though most children have mild disease with COVID, not everybody does. So we have seen kids have severe disease, be hospitalized, and we've seen deaths as well. We're also seeing that kids may have a mild disease and then weeks later have a multi-system inflammation from COVID. So there is definitely that personal protection need that this vaccine can provide. Secondly, which is really, really important, and we're seeing more and more of it, is that this age group has been particularly affected by the mental health crisis going on from the various restrictions and changes in their lifestyles, loss of socialization, education. There's a lot to protect in this age group.
The clinic will be hosted virtually through Virtual Kids in partnership with an organization 19 to 0 and the Vaccine Hesitancy Clinic at the Alberta Children's Hospital. There's a new initiative between Taber Police Service and Lethbridge College. It will allow students to sponsor themselves into police training. As BCN's Naveen Day explains, it will make candidates easier to recruit by a police service after completion.
Lethbridge College and Taber Police Service are launching a new initiative that will allow up to 6 police recruit candidates to self-sponsor their own training at the college's Police Cadet Training Program this fall. Taber Police Chief Graham Abella says the training will be hosted at the Taber Police Service and give candidates a much-needed competitive advantage.
Normally, Lethbridge Police Service or Medicine Hat Police Service are in position to be able to host the academy, and all of us send our recruits to that. This year, Medicine Hat and Lethbridge don't have much need for training, but some of the smaller police agencies do, for example, us and the Blood Tribe Police Service. So as a result of that, we've decided to host this training ourselves.
Dr. Janine Weber, who is the Dean for the Center of Justice and Human Services at the college, says students who pay for their own training rather than be sponsored by a single police service will have higher ready options available to them when it comes time to join the force.
If new positions come available in some of the other police services in Alberta that are not available at the beginning of the training, they would be able to apply and be able to be hired. Whereas when it's only sponsored spots, what's happening is it's only the known positions at that time that police services are obviously recruiting for and selecting appropriate candidates.
The Taber Police Service will be sponsoring 2 new recruits to enroll in the program in the traditional method and also offer the opportunity for up to 6 self-sponsored students to obtain the credential. Weber praises the collaboration as an incredible initiative to bridge the field with academics.
It's just a great example of how we can leverage each other's strengths and really help to prepare people for their career.
I know as a small police agency, if I can get a sponsored candidate who's themselves paid for their own training, their own education in order to apply to my police service, that's definitely something that I look at as that would be an advantage to that person in my competition.
The college's Police Cadet Training Program was launched in 2017 and was recognized with the Gold Program Excellence Award by Colleges and Institutes Canada in 2018. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
The Southern Alberta Crime Stoppers branch is encouraging locals to hop on their bikes and ride for a great cause. Staff have launched the Cycle for Crime Stoppers fundraising event, and the goal is $5,000. All of the money raised from the campaign will go towards the Southern Alberta Crime Stoppers unit.
Fundraising efforts are massive to us. So we've really found it a challenge with the pandemic, as have many others, I recognize. We're finding it very hard to even just cover operational expenses. So it is through the fundraising efforts and the donations that we're able to pay out all these tips. So we work on the anonymous tips. It's paying out those rewards to individuals. In order to be able to do that, we do need to raise monies. That's how we're funding the entire Crime Stoppers program within the province.
The virtual event will start on June 1st and run until the 30th. Students learning from home and at school are set to receive some much-needed equipment. The Evangelical Free Church of Lethbridge has donated 40 Chromebooks to the Lethbridge School Division. As Micah Quinn explains now, 6 schools within the division were given these much-needed gifts.
The superintendent of schools for the Lethbridge School Division, Dr. Cheryl Gilmore, says the division is grateful for the donations and students will be able to put the Chromebooks to good use.
As we've experienced all year long, there's periods of time when classes are in quarantine or individual students are in quarantine. And of course, we shift back and forth. And so having accessibility to technology is really important. And even when we're learning in school now, technology has become a real seamless part of what we do in schools. And so it's a huge benefit to these students.
The Minister of Community Engagement for the Evangelical Free Church of Lethbridge, Monica Lowen, says the church is serving when they have the opportunity.
The E-Free Church has had a great relationship with the Lethbridge School Division for the last number of years, getting involved with the Poverty Intervention Committee, wanting to support families and students in our community. So when we were approached about the need for technology for some of the students in the division, we were happy to help. We want to be able to build relationships into the city. Our mission is to share the hope of Jesus, and we want to be able to do that through meeting tangible needs.
The principal of Galbraith Elementary School, Sandy Sheldrup, says this donation allows kids to get technology into their hands when they would have never been able to afford it otherwise.
In fact, I have Immigrant Services getting some translators together so that we can translate to the parents and show them how it works, and they can get on with their learning. Many of these families have using cell phones that are going between multiple members of the family, and now this means 5 more of my kids are online.
Lowen says 1 in 5 kids in Lethbridge lives in poverty, and an education is the first step in moving kids out of hardship. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Asian Heritage Month continues throughout Canada. It's an opportunity to learn more about the achievements and contributions of Canadians of Asian descent, who throughout our history have done so much to make Canada the country it is today. So Ketu Shah, who's vice president of the Gujarati Society of Lethbridge and area, says newcomers arrived in Lethbridge from India in the 1990s to practice medicine. Then more came to study the sciences at our university.
A lot of kids started coming from Kerala and all that stuff to do their master's program and doctorate degrees here. So at that time, they started doing the programs, and since 2012 or 13, a lot of students have started coming in.
COVID-19 vaccinations in Saskatchewan are now open to young people between the ages of 12 and 17. That applies to all youth in the province, including those who live in the northern regions where age eligibility was previously 18 and up. Anyone eligible can visit a drive-through or walk-in clinic. They can also book an appointment online or by contacting a participating pharmacy. Only the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine has been approved for that age group.
But beginning in early June, the SHA will be setting up clinics in every school in Saskatchewan to deliver the COVID-19 vaccine. Students and parents will be notified in advance when the vaccine clinic is coming to your school. I should note that you don't have to wait for the vaccine clinic to come to your school. As of today, everyone 16 and older is eligible to receive their vaccine. And this Thursday, everyone 12 and older becomes eligible. So if you don't want to wait for your vaccine clinic in your school, you can get your shot at your pharmacy, walk-in clinic, or drive-through clinic right away.
The Manitoba government is set to tighten its COVID-19 health orders in advance of the long weekend. Premier Brian Pallister says stricter measures will focus on gathering and staying home. Manitoba already bans most social gatherings at private homes, and indoor dining at restaurants and food courts is banned. Pallister says case numbers spiked after the previous long weekend and doesn't want to see a repeat of that.
future's in our hands. There are things we can't control. Certainly, we can't control the fact we have a population of 1.36 million people, and we're concentrated in one major center, more than most provinces. We can't control the effectiveness of the vaccine. After first vaccine, it varies, but they're generally saying between 60 and 78% on first vaccine effectiveness, and second vaccines we know are higher, can go as high as 90 in some cases. Thanks to our researchers for developing these vaccines. But we don't really have a lot of control over that. They do, and thank goodness for their inventiveness and their research and for the manufacture and availability of those important vaccines.
Ontario has unveiled a 3-step reopening plan that will lift public health restrictions based on vaccination rates beginning in mid-June. Government officials say they can begin loosening restrictions because case rates and hospitalizations continue to come down while vaccination rates increase.
The roadmap represents a way out of the pandemic and provides a clear path forward on what will be carefully and safely reopened and when. It includes 3 steps based on the province-wide vaccination rate and improvements in key public health and healthcare indicators. When it is time to exit the province-wide emergency brake, we will begin first with the settings that we know are the safest. Step 1 of our roadmap has an initial focus on resuming outdoor activities with smaller crowds, where the risk of transmission is lower, along with permitting retail with restrictions. This includes allowing outdoor gatherings of up to 10 people, outdoor dining of up to 4 people per table, and non-essential retail at 15% capacity.
Now, what's the expression in southwestern Alberta? If you don't like the weather, you wait 5 minutes? Well, the snow we received today will be sticking around a little longer than 5 minutes, but for how much longer? Full weather details are coming up. You know, all day long I had the song Winter Wonderland ringing in my ears, and for good reason. We received around 5 centimeters of the white stuff earlier today. Closer to the mountains, they saw up to 15 centimeters. Jeanette Rocher is here now with a complete look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, how long will the snow be sticking around?
Well, I like that you are in that winter spirit, Hal. Not me. I just want this to go away. I want my summer back, to be quite frank. Yes, so lots of snowfall today in southern Alberta. Actually, Lethbridge area, we're looking at 5 to 10 centimeters, another 2 centimeters to fall overnight into tomorrow, Friday. That's when it's supposed to taper off. High of 2 degrees tomorrow. Saturday, no more snow, mix of sun and cloud, 13 degrees. The high as we get back into the teens for the temperatures here. 13 degrees on Sunday, 60% chance of showers. We're looking at periods of rain also on Monday with a high of 16, high of up to 18 next Tuesday and 15 on Wednesday. Wednesday, we could also see a chance of some showers. So we are just a little bit all over the place, certainly not near the expected high for this time of year. For today anyways, 19 degrees being the average high for this time of year. 5 degrees being the average low. 29 was our high temperature in 1964, and in 1987 we had our lowest on record, which was -3. 5:40 is when the sun rose this morning, and our sun set this evening at 9:16 p.m. So let's take a look at what's happening across the rest of the country. Sunshine on the west coast expected tomorrow, 20 degrees in Victoria, 18 degrees in Vancouver. Beautiful out on that west coast there. Edmonton, mix of sun and cloud, 12 degrees, reasonably unscathed by all of this snow. Calgary, overnight snowfall, but into tomorrow tapering off as well, mainly overcast tomorrow, 7 degrees the high in Calgary. As we look to the rest of the prairies, Saskatoon also expecting some snow, 4 degrees the high. Periods of freezing rain in Regina, 5 degrees the high, 16 the high in Winnipeg. Chance of showers, also looking at a risk of some afternoon thunderstorms. They're still having that local smoke issue from those wildfires, and hopefully that rainfall there should help out a little bit. Hot over here in central Canada, 30 degrees the high in Toronto, 31 in Ottawa, 30 degrees the high in Montreal. Montreal also has the humidity with that. Their humidex sitting at 34 tomorrow, so going to be a warm one. Same thing for the rest of the East Coast here. Look at these beautiful temperatures. Fredericton, sunshine, 26 degrees, 21 in Halifax. Charlottetown, 21 degrees. It's almost like we're not even in the same country in Alberta. St. John's, Newfoundland, looking at 19 degrees tomorrow with a mix of sun and clouds. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
The Bank of Canada says many households have taken on large mortgages compared with their income since the start of the pandemic. That limits their financial flexibility and poses a broader vulnerability to the economy. The central bank notes that total household debt has picked up sharply since the middle of last year as the housing market started to heat up. The bank's latest review of risks to the country's financial system also highlighted concerns about a too-soon withdrawal of pandemic aid for businesses. A mediator in the dispute between Calgary-based Enbridge and the state of Michigan over the Line 5 pipeline says the two sides plan to keep on talking. A retired U.S. District Court judge was appointed to oversee the talks. Gerald Rosen says talks continue and both sides anticipate further sessions together. In this report, Rosen says the vital energy conduit for much of Ontario, Quebec, and the U.S. Midwest will remain in operation for now. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer originally wanted it shut down by May 12th to prevent what she called an ecological disaster when Line 5 crosses the Great Lakes. The head of Cineplex says both the feds and the provincial leaders need to create a better plan to support Canada's hurting movie theatre chains. Cineplex CEO Ellis Jacob says it's time health officials be consistent and move forward as summer movie season gets underway next month. He says there are inconsistencies playing out in the provinces. Most of Canada's theatres remain closed under COVID-19 restrictions. Ford is making a costly bet that buyers will embrace an electric F-150 truck that would transform the way the world drives. The new truck is available and able to drive up to 500 kilometers per battery charge and will retail for around $40,000 US. Company officials say the truck also has a large lithium battery that can power your house if the electricity goes out.
With Lightning, really, they have so much that is riding on it, and it's not just them. It really is the industry overall.
Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 125 points in the day to finish at 19,543. The Dow was up 188 points at 33,084. The S&P 500 was up 43 points to 4159, and the Nasdaq was up 236 points on the day to 13,536. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down $1.31 to $62.05 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 4 cents to $2.93 US. Gold was down 13 cents to $18.7709 US an ounce, and silver finished the day at $27.75 US an ounce. Wheat is at $339 per metric ton. Barley's at $350, canola's at $903, and corn is at $398 per metric ton. Live cattle were down 30 cents to $116.60. Feeder cattle were down 83 cents to $135.75, and lean hogs were up $1.30 to $112.25. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 82.92 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Health Canada says as of May 13th, 740 fully vaccinated people have contracted COVID-19. It also says almost 13,500 people who received their first dose were infected. The department says the stats come from 9 provinces that submitted data. Coming up, a powerful testimony about a woman who went down the dark road of drugs and had thoughts about suicide and a lot of rage in her life, but then she had a life-changing experience when she met God in a very special place. Hear the amazing testimony of Christine Soule, who wrote the book Broken and Beautiful, in just a moment.
Today's interview is an incredible story of how God took these scattered pieces of a life of child abuse, poverty, human trafficking, and more, and somehow turned them into a life of joy and purpose. From Seattle, Washington, we are joined today by Christine Soule, a founder of Providence Heights, which is a nonprofit organization helping women and children in need. She is also the author of a book called Broken and Beautiful, which just came out in November. Welcome to Bridge City News, Christine. So great to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Christine, let's talk about your book. So this book was written out of your own difficult life experiences. Can you share maybe a brief overview of what your life was like growing up? I understand that your father was married 7 times, your mother was married 4 times, and that was pretty hard on you, and it was a little dysfunctional, right?
Yeah, a little bit of dysfunction. It's a great way to put it. So, yeah, my dad was married 7 times, 8 if you include my mom twice. My mom was married 4. And at about the age of 5 is when they got a divorce. And the way he did divorce is once he divorced the woman, he just didn't really speak to the kids again either. And so I didn't really have a relationship with him, just a handful of times after that. And I was a latchkey kid. I let myself in and out of the house every morning. I got myself to school from kindergarten on, and did my meals. My mom is my hero, so she was absolutely incredible. But she worked 3 jobs, and she did the best that she could. And about the age of 10, I started doing drugs. And at 17, I got pregnant with my daughter. And 2 years later, at 19, I had identical twin boys. At that point, I was a meth addict. I was trafficked. I was abused. I was living a gay lifestyle, and I was filled with rage. And, you know, I fell to my knees at 21, and I cried out to God, and I said, if you are real, take my life, it's yours. And I so tangibly felt the power and presence of God that I threw all of the drugs and alcohol away. And where I should have had a heart attack for stopping meth the way that I did, I never even had a desire, temptation, or withdrawal. I was completely and totally set free. And now that set me on this journey of discovering who this Jesus is, and really bouncing from house to house with my 3 babies, not knowing how I was going to survive. And, you know, at one point I found out all of my bills, and I just thought, wow, I can't even put a dent into any of this. Any job that I could get wouldn't even pay for my childcare. So I didn't know how I was going to survive. And I sat there and I thought, you know what? God really rescued me before. Maybe he can help me with this. And I wrote my $40, the last $40 that I owned, I wrote a check, and I gave it to the one person that I knew that went to a Christian church. And he had no idea that was the last penny to provide for my babies. And, you know, I wish I would have written down how God provided for me. But, you know, I never even had a late payment. And that man that I gave that check to, I've been married to for 24 years now.
Wow.
So God provides.
Yeah, I would say so, like tenfold or more from the sounds of it. That's amazing. So it's interesting that you know, kind of got involved with somebody from a church. What was your view of God as a child and as a young woman during this terrible time? Because I understand you were also a victim of human trafficking and of abuse as well.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, my view of God, ironically, I always believed in God. Even in bars and drunk and being trafficked, I would tell people that they needed Jesus. I didn't know Jesus. I never had a relationship with Jesus. But, you know, I do know that there were people that were praying for me.
That's all it takes sometimes, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's amazing that you would just kind of throw everything down. It's like there was that urging, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
What was it that finally turned your life around? Like, how did this happen? What was that light bulb moment that you knew he was there? And
Yeah. I think one of the big moments was just that I was in such a state of rage and despair. And honestly, if I didn't have my 3 babies, I don't know that I would be alive today. They were my hope, and I wanted something great for them. And you know, there was a point in my life I'll share as a child when I was 15 years old. My sister ended up having an affair with my adopted dad. And I was the one who caught them, and I had to go and tell my mom. And it devastated her. And so she ended up taking me to a counselor. I got on antidepressant medication, and almost instantly I was preparing my suicide. And I was ready to commit to that. And, you know, I went for a walk, and I ran into this boy at my school, and, you know, he was just kind. And there was something in his words that gave me a reason to live. And as I walked away, he said, "Hey," he goes, I'll see you at school tomorrow." And I was like, "I will see you tomorrow." And I chose not to take those pills that I had planned. But I went and I sat in my school, and I thought, I don't even know what normal looks like. How do I act like a normal person when I can't even identify with that? And so I found myself running for this girl named Sherry, and I asked if I could stay in her home. And I stayed there for a week. And what I saw was love and compassion and joy. And you know, in that moment, when I left, it looked like I hadn't really achieved anything, learned anything from them. But it was a little glimmer of hope that carried me through those hard times. And so when I fell to my knees, it was that moment that God brought me to, of really desiring to give that to my children. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I was.
Yeah. In your book, you write about the importance of forgiveness. So who was it that you needed to forgive in your life? What brought you to that? And how do you do that in those kinds of circumstances? How do you get to that point?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I think first and foremost, it's my father. A lot of brokenness there, and different fathers along the road. So that was great opportunities for forgiveness. But you know, for the one that trafficked me, I think was the hard one for me. The others were pretty easy, but being trafficked was quite devastating. And you know, the thing that I realized is that was a very broken man. And he is one that I still continue to pray for, want the best. And really just that he could find forgiveness, that he could learn to forgive himself for choices that he made. And I think it's one of the greatest things that holds us back from our destiny is unforgiveness.
I know that there are many viewers that are in maybe not exact similar situations as that exactly, but possibly people are suffering from abuse and addiction, and a lot of people have no hope. What advice would you give to them, Christine?
My advice would be to just trust in God. He will take, you know, there's a scripture I love, it's Genesis 50:20, and people quote it all the time. And it's that the enemy, what the enemy has done for evil, God will turn for good. And I see a lot of people saying, well, God hasn't turned it for good for me. Well, keep reading. It says, for the saving of many lives. So really, I believe that if we take that pain that we've endured and we allow God to use that to set other people free, that's where we find victory. So share your story, share your testimony, because in the words that you have, the words that you share with others can speak such life that people don't have to experience that trauma. And then those things that you find were so traumatic in your own life are really empowering other people to live a life of freedom. And I find joy in that. And, you know, if I had to go through everything that I experienced again, knowing what I know today, I would say sign me up, because I know it's setting people free.
Wow, what an inspiration. And speaking of inspiring, please briefly share what you are doing with your Providence Heights organization. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, you know, I went from a life of extreme poverty to having the opportunity to live a life of philanthropy and generosity. And about 3 years ago, God put on my heart to start a nonprofit organization. So it's called Providence Heights, and we are a residential entrepreneurial training program. And we house women and children in need. And really the focus is that, you know, that number one, we are a sustainable organization, and that we teach women how to live sustainable lives. And so we start businesses. We just actually started in January. We got the keys to our building. And in March, we housed our first ladies. And in 6 weeks, they started a coffee business. It's called Providence Coffee. And it's ran through another nonprofit organization called Providence Collective. And so they built the website, they did the marketing, the labeling, all of the wording for the product. And they are breathtaking women who have a hope and a future. And I mean, we have women who are doing QuickBooks now and who are learning Adobe Illustrator, and they're talented and they're creative. And so that's our first product that has just come out. We've just launched as of like weeks ago. And so that's what we're doing. We work on really their identity in Christ. And so we do personality testing. We have life coaches, strength finders. And so that's who we are. And these women are beautiful. And our real focus is that we're preventative. You know, statistically, women have 72 hours on the streets before pimps and drug dealers get to them. And, you know, so if you want to end trafficking, don't let them enter the streets. If you want to end foster care, don't let kids go on, or don't let women enter the streets. If you want to end homelessness, drug addiction, don't let women enter the streets. Help them before they end up in a place where they're so far down the road that we can't get them back.
Yeah. Who are these women that you're helping? Are these women who have been on the streets, who have been in abusive and drug addicted situations?
Yeah, our main focus is prevention. And so these are women who are just, they could be your neighbor, they could be a friend, someone in your church, family member that's just trying to keep their head above water. And right now with COVID, there are so many women who are just, they look great on the outside, and on the inside, they're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so that's the women that we're looking for, or women who have come out of like Union Gospel Mission or different programs who are ready to make those changes. We want women who are determined to change the trajectory of their lives.
Mm-hmm. Now, how can people help you in this?
Yeah, the greatest way that you could help, number one, is if you know of women who could use this help, we want to embrace them, their family. The other way that you could help is just through donation, or if you go to providence-collective.org, then you can buy our amazing coffee.
Okay. Oh, nice. Nice. And you were saying that you're actually sitting in one of the rooms that you have for your ladies, right? It's like a little bedroom suite. And it looks like a living room. It's very cozy and beautiful. So you help these women.
Yes, yes. And all of our furniture is donated from World Vision.
Oh, wow. And then my understanding too is your book, Broken and Beautiful, all the profits are going towards Providence Heights as well to help these women.
Yes,
okay.
That's correct.
That's amazing. Christine, you're such an inspiration, and bless you, and just keep doing what you're doing. Thanks so much for sharing your story with us today, Christine.
Oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Christine Soul is the author of Broken and Beautiful, available at www.christinesoul.com, and look them up also online at Providence Heights and Providence Collective too, right, Christine?
That's right.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being with us today.
The Alberta economy is still going through some pretty tough times. We have the recession, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the lockdowns. But how has this really impacted the real estate market? To talk a bit more about it, talking about buying and selling here in southwestern Alberta, is Sean Ormston, CEO of Great Rate Realty. Sean, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Now, Sean, we all know how devastated the oil and gas sector has been. It's really impacted real estate and businesses in Calgary, Red Deer, but not as much here in southwestern Alberta. We're more agriculture based. Have you noticed a bit of a difference with the economy, especially when it comes to buying and selling a property?
No, I have noticed even over the years, as the economy goes in southern Alberta, we're pretty consistent, and that's a good thing because people can rely on stability in the market. And that's something that hopefully they can plan for. We like to plan for things, and it's nice to have stability in the market. So we get that in Southern Alberta.
So what are we at right now in Lethbridge specifically? Are we seeing more of a buyer's or a seller's market right now?
Well, it's interesting. If you look at the last decade, we've probably been mostly in a buyer's market, but we are transitioning. Some of the power is now falling to the sellers. And we can see that. I was looking at some numbers today. We've got home sales that are up about 50% this year so far. Wow. From last year's numbers. We have sale price of an average of $320,000, and last year where it was $285,000. So we have about a 12% increase in sale price as well. So things are on the up and up.
Well, that's good news. Now, let's talk about some of the bigger markets in Canada. We've seen massive increases in property values, including what we see in Vancouver and Toronto. But what about Lethbridge? Do you see more of a slow, steady increase, maybe 2 to 3 points per year when it comes to building equity?
What we've seen in the past is up years and down years, very, very small, 1%, 2%. So not a lot changes. Sometimes we get 2%, 3%. We can string together a few years where it feels like we're getting a lift, and then we might have kind of a balancing that, things balance out. But this year, this is the time we're seeing, like I said, a 12% increase in the first sort of 3 months of the year, 2.5 months since we've got going this year.
Now, we've seen record low interest rates, Sean, under 2 points for a 5-year closed mortgage. Do you think this trend will continue? What are your thoughts?
Well, we were seeing interest rates. We've got some mortgage brokers in our office. We were seeing rates getting down as low as 1.5%, which was unbelievable only in the last month. However, we've seen money also flow into the bond market recently. When money flows into the bond market, that's what drives interest rates higher. And, things are around that 2% that you mentioned. But I think we'll see that for a sustained period of time, as the Bank of Canada seems to always announce that their interest rate is on hold, at least in recent months, recent years. I anticipate that interest rates will remain low for a sustained period of time.
Is a variable rate mortgage still a good option in our current market?
I always tell people, consult with your bank, consult with your mortgage broker when looking at rates. If you look historically, it always seemed that variable rates were better, but the margin to me, in my opinion, is so thin on variable rate mortgage now. It doesn't seem like it would make a lot of sense to choose a variable rate over a fixed rate.
Now, I locked in my mortgage a couple of years ago, a 5-year close for 2.79%. I thought, hey, that's a pretty good buy, pretty good deal, right? More goes to the principal, less to the interest. Is it maybe a good time right now to renegotiate a blended mortgage with rates so low to try and get closer to that 2% mark?
Every mortgage, from what I've learned from mortgage brokers sort of informing me, is a little bit different. And there are penalties in each mortgage. There are prices that you have to pay to get out of these products. So when it comes to refinancing, I think you have to be very careful. You have to meet with your mortgage professional, meet with your bank, and really run the numbers to make sure that it's a good idea to either refinance or step into a blended product.
Now, you mentioned earlier the average price is around $320,000. So I guess people that have homes $250,000 to $300,000, they're selling a lot faster?
Yeah, we're starting to see the days on market and the inventory drop, especially in the $200,000 to $400,000 range, where affordability is apparent. Even though the homes above $400,000, we're also seeing a jump in the number of units sold. I just had a look at those numbers, and those numbers are quite staggering. Last year to this point, there were 32 homes that sold. This year in Lethbridge, this year there are 77. So a jump of about 140%. So it sounds like a big number. Prices are about the same. I looked at an average about $477,000 for $485,000 for those homes that are in the upper price range. But as you mentioned, most homes are selling in the $200,000 to $400,000 range, and they're selling in fewer days on market this year than last year.
So what do you attribute the hot market to? Is it that maybe people are working from home more often now? They want bigger office space? Is they're working maybe a hybrid? What are people telling you right now?
I think it's a combination of things. The interest rates being low are fantastic. That's something that people can really get excited about because they can lock in a low rate and have lower payments as long as they qualify at the stress test that is put in place by the government. I think the pandemic has made a lot of people realize, or a lot of people have been forced to work from home. And so while they sit in their houses, they're thinking about, gee, I need more space, or, we really need to have a spot for the office, or something like that, where people might have a continued period of time where they are working from home. And thirdly, which I don't think a lot of people talk about, is we also have a large group of buyers, younger buyers, that are sort of coming of age into the market. Many of these buyers are, we might refer them as millennial buyers. They're under 35 years old right now, but a lot of them went to school. They had school debt to pay off. They had to wait a little later in life to buy homes. And now we have a large demographic that I believe is coming into the market in all centers ready to buy their first home, somewhere between the age of 30 and 35 years old.
Let's talk about different areas of Lethbridge which seem to be more popular. I know people here that work at the station, they love the north side. Other people prefer the south side with the big trees, the bigger lots, but you get older homes. And then still there are others who love the west side because the newer homes and you're close to the ATB Center. And it seems to be more high density on the west side. What are you seeing right now?
Well, it's interesting. The west side has definitely grown the biggest in Lethbridge. There are as many people on the west side of Lethbridge now as there are on the north and the south combined.
Wow.
So a lot of the growth in the city over the past year has been on the west side. That's what really propelled this city into a 100,000 plus population as we've seen that growth. So people are choosing to live over there that want those newer homes, want those newer neighborhoods. There are newer neighborhoods, of course, on the north and south. Typically, the west side gives people a really good bang for their buck, and amenities have been developing on the west side. To your point about the ATB Center and the shopping that's come as the years have gone by.
You know, it's funny, I live on the west side and we're saying, we need a Walmart. You know, we need a Walmart superstore there. And so, you know, we've been campaigning for that. I kind of envy people on the south side because you got all of the amenities right there. It's amazing. And the beautiful mature trees. I really love that. Sean, during the COVID-19 pandemic, are people a little hesitant to venture out to open houses or maybe showings right now? What are you seeing?
You know, there's been really good leadership and guidance from the Alberta Real Estate Association on how to handle showings, viewings during the COVID pandemic. Obviously, everybody's worried about, contact and services. So the Alberta Real Estate Association has mandated that realtors, when showing homes, only bring 2 people with them on each showing. And so if you have a party, even kids involved, we're swapping people out of, in and out of the house to make sure everybody gets to see the home that needs to see the home, whether that's the buyers, the parents, whoever. We're only taking in 2 people at a time. Everybody's masked up, everybody's sanitizing. We advise sellers to leave all the lights on, all the interior doors open, to limit the touching of surfaces. So I think everybody in our industry has done a really good job to pay attention to what we can do as licensed real estate agents, as well as follow the guidance of the Alberta Real Estate Association to make sure we're keeping people safe.
Now, you mentioned stress tests earlier, Sean. Talk a bit about stress tests and the tougher mortgage requirements. How do they actually work?
Well, I have a love-hate relationship with the stress test as a realtor, and I understand why the government put it in. They put in an interest rate that is more expensive to qualify at. So what they're trying to do is protect people from borrowing too much money. However, as a realtor, I get concerned that there could be some overstepping because the interest rates are so low today. People can lock in money, like we talked about, around 2%. And so I've ran some numbers with the mortgage brokers who are in my office next door, and we've looked at things, and for a 5% down buyer, they're losing about 30% buying power on the price of the home they can purchase because they're having to qualify for the stress test. And that's difficult in a place like Southern Alberta. I wish that the government would take an approach to stress testing for the much higher dollar value homes where it does matter. And I'm not saying where it has to be 500,000, maybe $1 million, whatever it is. We are seeing markets like Toronto and Vancouver where prices are north of $1 million for an average home. And that's just not the case in Southern Alberta, like we talked about. Average so far for the year is 320,000.
Have you seen what you get in Vancouver, though, for $1 million or $1.5 million? You don't get a lot. It's a little bungalow, maybe 700 square foot, built in the 60s. It's a fixer-upper. Think about what you can get here in Lethbridge in southwestern Alberta for $1 million. Now, Sean, if the stress test was removed altogether for the more stable markets like we have here in Lethbridge, how much of a difference do you think that would make for buyers?
Well, I think it would make a huge difference. Like I said, it's about, for your 5% down buyers, or people coming into the market, first-time home buyers, it's about 30% more buying power. So, a $300,000 mortgage or purchase could be a $400,000 purchase. It's that much of a difference. And there is a big difference in the quality and caliber of home from $300,000 to $400,000. Now, would we expect the market to also lift in prices? Absolutely, we would. So it's just, we're in the same boat though as everybody else. Everybody is required to follow the stress test rules in the country. And so we're no different, and buyers just have to navigate that at this point in time.
Are you noticing maybe a decline in younger people looking for homes because of the stress test?
I think some younger people are discouraged because they have to qualify at such a higher rate, and previous generations haven't had to do this stress test. I think, as long as you're borrowing fixed money for at least a 5-year term in Canada, I don't know that any of us can predict the future much more than 5 years anyway. So I'd like to see whatever that rate is to be the one that they can actually qualify for. So I think, to your point, there is some discouragement, but like I said, it's the world we live in, and we don't make the rules, we just have to live by them.
Now let's talk about advice you have for a young couple looking at buying their very first home. We had a couple of young couples here at the station bought their very first home. It was beautiful to see. But it's more than just the 5% down, isn't it? You've got the legal fees for your real estate lawyer. I mean, there's so much more, isn't it?
There is a little bit more. Legal fees can run somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 when you're purchasing a home. You also have to think about the property tax situation. That's the one that's often forgotten about, is at what point in the year are the property taxes due. And so while the property taxes are calculated to the day, depending on the time of year you buy, you may have to come to the closing table with a check to shore those up. Or in some cases, if you're buying earlier on in the year, you may receive a check from the sellers for the time they've occupied the home up to that point, to which you'll have a nice big property tax bill due in June anyways. So you do need to plan for these things.
Sean, some people actually co-purchase a home, joining up with friends, parents, or siblings to share the mortgage. Are you seeing more of an increase in this type of home buying right now to make it more affordable?
In our market, I think things are pretty stable with that. Most home buyers are the only ones on the purchase contract. We do see co-signing from parents that are jumping in to help their kids buy a home. But I think in markets where prices are a lot more expensive than ours, you see a lot more of that. I looked at some statistics for markets like Toronto, Vancouver, and some of these expensive markets, and as much as 2/3 of all buyers are needing a co-signer to be able to purchase those very expensive homes. In Lethbridge, the nice thing we love about Lethbridge is that it's affordable, and $300,000, $320,000 is still a very affordable price tag in Canadian housing, when average home prices across the country are flirting with $500,000.
How well are some of the bedroom communities doing around Lethbridge, like Coaldale, Raymond, and even Nobleford?
I think they all have, there's all various reasons to move to these communities, of course, and people like the smaller town life. Places like Coaldale, it's really big lots that are out there for even the new building areas.
There's a great
like
bakery out there too, we
Nobleford,
can't forget, right?
there is a great bakery out of Coaldale, absolutely. And Nobleford is a neat place because their property taxes are so low. And so if you are looking at your overall cost to live, that's a place where almost everybody's property taxes are under $1,000 a year. And so, and still you're on, city water, municipal water and sewer, which is important to people. So places like that people that want the small town life, I think those places will flourish.
Sean, we only have about a minute left here. Let's talk about floor plans. As you get older, like myself, I'm not a big fan of the 2 stories anymore. 15 steps up, 16 steps down, 31 steps. I'm out. That's it. I'm done. I bought a bi-level. People love bungalows. What are you seeing right now? Are the baby boomers and the Gen Xers preferring less steps?
I think as everyone gets older, they prefer less steps. That sort of seems to be the trend. Once in a while, we get folks that, some seniors that are really fit and they want the 2 stories. They want to do those steps every day because they think that that's something that's going to help them in their activity. But I think most of us prefer one level living as we get older. So we're seeing that desire. But the flip side to that is land is at a premium. And when land is at a premium for new housing and new development, the builders would prefer 2-story homes because that's what they can fit in some of the lots that are provided. To get bigger homes, they have to be 2-story. So we're seeing a good mix out there. Of course, lots of bungalow and bi-level buyers, but as time goes on, especially when we go back to the west side where all the new development is, majority of those homes are 2-story homes.
And we can't forget about the 4-level and 3-level splits too, right? Great talking real estate with you, Sean. Thanks so much. Sean Ormston, CEO of Great Rate Realty. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks very much for having me on.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.